Time to start the pod! With thanks to Motorhead, Jim Johnston, and I guess Triple H. Welcome to episode 251 of Americans Watching the Footy. I am Benjamin Castle, coming to you from San Diego, California. Been a very busy weekend and Monday for me as we get to recording this. And it's my brother's birthday as we're doing this. So, well, for the next little bit anyway, not by the time you hear it. Hi, Ethan.
Hi. I'm really disappointed. Nobody got me a Rizzler cameo video.
He's back in South San Francisco, and we're going to be going through round 18. This was more of a BB Big Boy round than the prior weeks. I think I called round 17 expectation round. A lot of the games lived up to closeness expectations, I guess, in this one. How many of the results really surprised you?
I mean, technically I only went 6 out of 9 on tips, but I guess really only 1 or 2 were like real surprises.
Nice, by the way. 6 for 9. I think that's what took to close out that test series.
Why was it so low scoring?
I don't know. Is Kingston just a hard surface to bat on? Something different with the pink ball? But yeah, Scott Boland now needs 3 statues because Boland needs one at the MCG, at the SCG, and now in Kingston. I just went to check that in the afternoon. It's like, wait, fuck, it's already over? How?
I want to know how it took Jofra Archer 3 years to get back into the England test team, because I watched a bunch of the England-India test, and man, he looked good. That was actually, I'm disappointed I fell asleep before it ended this morning. It was interesting. It was, like, as someone who has much preferred shorter forms of cricket, like, seeing the back end of India's order try to stay up there long enough, and you could tell that, like, Jasprit Bumrah is very uncomfortable batting, and watching, like, some of the strategy and trying to make sure that, like, his partner would be the one on strike instead of him.
Ravi Jadeja putting up the best stand that he could, an unfortunate ending with it rolling onto the stumps for, was that Mohammad Siraj, I believe? Well, Archer had all sorts of complications with an injury in his bowling elbow for the past 3-4 years. So that's the explanation there. He missed the Ashes because of another stress fracture in that elbow. And he made his international comeback at the T20 World Cup. I think was just ramped up from there. I do like England's chances right now for the Ashes.
I mean, I think Australia will get some things figured out. Like, I don't know if Sam Constas will be in there. Like, he just might not be ready yet.
I question the readiness of any other openers. I mean, I'm not as well versed in, stuff like Shield, where some Australians could inform us on what other opening prospects the Aussies do have. I mean, it was obvious that Bo Webster deserved the call up for Test cricket based on his Shield form, and that's gone swimmingly. But other than that, I'm really unsure. My tipping this week, I went 7 for 9. One of the ones that I got wrong doesn't really surprise me, and another one really fucking does.
Those being?
We'll get into it.
All right. I also thought it's worth mentioning that after going 3-7 in the regular season, MI New York are your MLC champions.
It makes perfect sense.
Oh, not just that, but the fact that they, once again, don't understand the concept of, like, rain.
That's all cricket for you. The
no, but
BCCI,
this was really stupid.
The BCCICC.
Yes, but the qualifier between the Washington Freedom and Texas Super Kings got rained out, so the Freedom advanced because they had a better regular season.
That's a condition that's also present in IPL and other leagues.
It's just like, guys, how do you not just throw an extra day or two into the schedule? You know, even the Little League World Series manages to do that.
Here's another idea. How about you play in a place where you're not going to get rain? Did you regret leaving Oakland? Or maybe, how about you try and accelerate those potential cricket oval projects in Irvine for the LA Knight Riders or San Jose for the Unicorns?
Also, there was one match that was limited to 5 overs per side because of rain. That was fun.
Once again, I wonder how much they miss Oakland. Anyway, this is a footy podcast. So
I was all set to get into the AEW All-In 0 Hour over the weekend.
Specifically 0 Hour because of Big Boom AJ and Big Justice and the Rizzler?
Yes, the Rizzler was wearing a cowboy suit. It was hysterical. And then the last couple days, he's acted out like Godfather and Sopranos scenes. The Rizzler, Uncle Savasta, AJ, Big Justice, and I think Cousin Angelo doing the Sopranos opening, except the better version.
Woke up this morning, got some gabagoo. And then I woke up the next day and got some gabagoo.
Let's get to the footy, though.
Carlton 9-12-66, defeated by Brisbane 15-13-103.
The Blues looked game after the Lions got out to an early 3-0 lead, and then they just lost the pace in the second quarter. A 4-0 third erased any remaining doubt, if there was any present in the first place. I remember people commenting on a poor crowd for this being under 33,000, but this isn't a matchup that traditionally has gotten great crowds. I think it's just been rare that both teams have been good at the same time. Though I do recall either in 2022 or 2023, a game that got like 45,000 around like round 8 between these sides. That one was 2023 round 8. That was a Jack Payne masterclass on Charlie Curnow, and one of those players was physically absent from this game, and the other was not physically absent, but hardly felt. Charlie Curnow, this is kind of alarming, is goalless for his last 4 games. I am more than shocked by that, and honestly, I'm a little dismayed by it because, yes, he's quite the free kick merchant, but also, I want games to actually be compelling, even if we're doing a Carlton hate watch every week, and this wasn't that, going pretty long into the night.
I realized a couple things. The Carlton games that I'm going to be seeing, I probably didn't need to. I probably could have just ended up doing general admission tickets, as it turns out.
I mean, that was a little hard to predict at the time.
Yeah. Also, this game just taught me very little. Now, in part, I was barely awake by the end of it. I had driven about 14 hours back from Oregon. No, it does not take 14 hours, but I went the long way so I could enjoy the coast, and it was one of those rare, clear days out there, and it was totally worth it.
Yeah, looking at the raw drive time, if you're going from, were you going from Bend?
No, I was going from Tigard, so just outside of Portland, which, like, you could do in, 10 hours.
10 and a half is what it looks like, but take the scenic route if you can, of course. If I move back from San Diego and I have the time, I would consider, taking, like, Highway 1 the whole way or something.
And yeah, I was barely hanging on for the final few minutes. Like, I probably fell asleep with a couple minutes left, but there were no more goals. Just,
it didn't help that the Lions went goalless in the fourth quarter, and they had every right to win by more than 37. Although
the final score made it look more competitive than it actually was.
Well, expected score wasn't far off, but I guess with the Blues getting 3 goals back in the fourth, the final score made things look more respectable when most of the game wasn't that.
It was 99-46.
That feels more like it. For the halfway point of the second quarter, three-quarter time, Carlton were goalless. Meanwhile, Brisbane just kept up the pressure throughout the whole game. I think Josh Dunkley was most emblematic of that. With his 13 tackles, he ended up winning the inaugural Robert Walls medal.
I know he also got the perfect 10 in the coaches' votes. I'm going to have to look at it again to see if I actually really liked him that much.
Collective effort in the middle. I don't think I'm too mad about the result of that. I don't have like a huge problem with him winning it. There are a good bunch of candidates, but the pressure stood out to me, and Dunkley was the poster child for that.
What did I learn that was new? I guess Matthew Carroll, who's mostly been a positive for Carlton, had a really bad game.
Charlie Cameron, because we need one Charlie C to do something, is back in form somewhat. He's kicked 3 each of the past couple weeks and had opportunities for more. He finished 3-3 from just 9. The delivery to him's been better. He's working well, still sharing the kind of small forward responsibilities with Kai Lohman. And because you've got to deal with both of them, it's more difficult to hold both of them accountable. Lohman contributed a goal in this game as well as he has each of the past couple weeks. I'm glad that he's able to string some games together. He's kicked 8 goals in his past 5 games, so he's more like himself too. And when we've got concerns about Brisbane defensively, it means the offensive output is going to need to make up for that. And it's starting to show that. Now, yes, these past couple games have been against lesser opponents in the Power and Blues. Things are definitely going to be ramping up for them as they take on the Bulldogs and then go to the Suns for a mighty important Q clash. Like they don't have any easy games from here. Even Sydney round 22 at the Gabba. We're going to be talking about these guys a lot, and all the time I see Essendon in these primetime slots, I'm going to wonder, why is it not the Lions? Because Brisbane have a grand total of, actually they still have 2 Fridays scheduled, but feels like they need 1 or 2 more. That Hawthorn one round 24 looks inviting.
Yeah, this game just didn't teach me a lot that it didn't already know. I like Cam Rayner. That's not new. Carlton's decision-making in the forward 50 remains really, really bad, and I don't think anyone embodies that better than Curnow.
The delivery, not great either. With a lot of Carlton chains also cut off in the middle, we didn't see the better of their entries.
I thought this was a good opportunity for Corey Durden to cement himself in the team, secure his place, and he did pretty much nothing to help his case.
I will say Patrick Cripps, 3 votes, did try to lift. It's 7 score involvements and 9 clearances from his 26. 17 contested possessions and 2 goal assists for George Hewitt out of his 33. So those 2 contributed, but the collective Lions effort was there. Really clean game from Lachie Neale, and going from the back, the combination of Darcy Wilmot and Dane Zorko was really solid. Wilmot with 14 marks, which has got to be a career high for him. He keeps his streak going. Darcy Wilmot, do you remember when he made his debut?
Finals a couple years ago?
Finals in 2022, and he has now played 73 consecutive games, 31 disposals, 14 marks. Those are new career highs for him. I still would like to see him be able to do a more real defensive role, just because, again, you're going to be coming up against top teams without the likes of Jack Payne in there. And you've also just lost Noah Answorth to an Achilles injury, and it was pretty obvious right away. You saw the pop there. Answorth had been the unsung hero of that Lions defense on the small to middle side last year, especially when Brandon Starcevich had been out, and that was the case this year as well. You categorize Answorth and Ryan Lester as those just super underrated players. In terms of replacing him, Kadeen Coleman, I think, did get through his VFL game this week, so watch for him to come back. There are reinforcements there between Coleman and on the tall side. Maybe this is finally the time for Tom Duday to come in and have his first AFL game as a Lion. He is through concussion protocol now. So there are options, but you're still going to be missing some of that perhaps top level. And Zach Bailey is suspended for this next one for that high bump on Nick Haynes. Yeah, again, nothing really revolutionary out of this game. Tom de Koning kicked a huge goal to cut the lead down to 47. And it's tough to tell right now who the more disappointing Blues are in Australian sports. You know what? I know this is really early, but I'm tempted.
Do it.
This is going to be a brief part where we talk about the NRL.
I did not watch Origin. I was sleeping because I needed to be awake coming back from Oregon the following day.
I watched it. I woke up for it and was thrilled by the Queensland win. The old Ed Reed saying where it's 70% of the earth is covered by water, the rest is covered by Ed Reed. In Origin Game 3, Tom Dearden was that guy who covered absolutely everything. And yeah, just damn, impressive all around. And winning the series without a win in Queensland that's got to be incredibly rare. So there's that. Super complimentary of Billy Slater and his coaching calls. And just, yeah, way to go Maroons. Again, not the biggest rugby league person at all. I prefer Union. I've said that. But I am clearly on the Maroons side for Origin. It helps that I am too. It helps that I have friends who are Queenslanders. But yeah, that was fun. And so 2 nights in a row, Queensland teams wearing maroon, beating up on the Blues at their home venues. So that was fun. The next night was fun. And then, well, it was in flashes, I ended up being disappointed in the end. You know how I feel. Gold Coast Suns 10-9-69.
Nice.
Defeating Collingwood 8-15-63.
The mighty Sun.
The Suns are going to have a home final.
I mean, it's still kind of a mess, but I would say as of now, technically they're in 5th. And if we assume they're going to get those 4 points against Essendon, so really they're at 48 and would basically be in 4th.
They have a chance. It's going to be difficult, but there's a world in which they crack top 4. Going to be tough with Geelong playing such a weak back schedule.
A win at Adelaide this week would really open the door for it.
Yeah, that would be quite the sweep and would prove something in a rematch where they got some of the most help that a team had gotten from umpiring this year. I don't think umpiring decided this one. I think the Suns, based on their accuracy and a lot of other things, just greater consistency throughout the game, did deserve this win. It's tough for me to say.
Frankly, Collingwood just, up until they finally got a goal midway through the third, weren't really in this game mentally or physically or anything. And up until the fourth quarter, really, Nick Dacos and Darcy Moore had been the only ones to do much. And then Josh finally kicked it into gear in the fourth, whereas the Suns were playing through Matt Rowell. Daniel Rioli was really doing a good job pushing play from the back. And the Suns were just the better team for most of this game. This was a learning experience for both.
I think the learning experience for Collingwood is, Myachek and Lipinski matter. This seemed like a game that Collingwood were content with losing. And I think it showed in the lethargy that they had for a lot of the game and just the management decisions themselves. You took out your most consistent goal kicker of the past 7 years and the best inside 50 kick of the entire competition. You have either one of those guys in there, considering he kicked 8-15, and you probably win this game.
I mean, I think Lipinski's the much more significant out with how well Jamie Elliott and some of the other forwards have done. But combine no Lipinski and then no Pendlebury for the first half, and it was pretty rough, but the Suns also just came out and played really well. That should not be ignored.
Let me also factor in that the Suns were once again without Sam Collins, so Myachek could have really wreaked some havoc against one of those other defenders. That's another reason why I'm highlighting Myachek's absence. No, I'm not going to take anything away from the Suns. They were pretty composed throughout this game. Even when they were getting down, they didn't, panic and try to change up their style that much. Jared Witts with a solid night in the ruck against the Darcy Cameron Mason Cox combo. I get why you played Mason against Witts in particular. I'm not sure if that's the right move going forward, unfortunately.
I wish Q Clash had the sort of feeling that Collingwood trips to Gold Coast always tend to have,
where it's like a majority Collingwood crowd and there's actual heat in things.
It sounded like probably about 60-40 Collingwood, but this was an important game for the development of football on the Gold Coast and in Queensland, and I hope that it helps.
I want to see a majority Suns crowd for a Q Clash that draws 20,000. Is that too much to ask?
Probably.
Let me see. What is the highest attendance for a Q Clash at People First Stadium? Last year, actually, they drew over 21,000 in a game that ended up losing a lot of steam. So hopefully they can capitalize on that. If the Suns beat Adelaide or at least keep it close, I think there's even more reason to be compelled. But I mean, there's already enough things that are compelling about this Suns team. We talked a lot about Matt Rowell keeping up.
That was the best game I've seen out of him in a while because he had kind of slowed down for a stretch.
He'd just been a tackler for most of the week prior in his 100th. I hope the grass tasted good under the roof. On Friday, 2-1 from 32. That was his first multi-goal game since a game against the Eagles last year, of all teams. Still having 13 tackles, 12 clearances. You've got Witts feeding him properly, and you've got him and Anderson converting from there. Starting plays off. Anderson using his speed well, as is expected as at this point. Anderson with 8 clearances of his own and a goal from 32. And one reason why I can't stand the Suns, even as much as I like both these players, is the fact that these two guys were the last priority gift-wrapped package that they did in the AFL draft. The league was just like, hey, you suck so much, here, you get pick 1 and 2. You already had pick 1. Now you can take these 2 friends who are like already uber talented playing with each other.
I mean, I don't mind as much for an expansion team over the course of a few years than I do the idea of just like, you suck, here's extra picks.
This was after year 9.
I get that, but like,
That's the problem. No,
maybe-
like if you have care package stuff and you're trying to ease a team in, do it within the first 3 to 5 years. Don't go beyond that. At some point, you've got to let teams try and create their own luck rather than make it happen from a league standpoint.
By the way, Anderson was terrific in the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter was basically Josh Dacos going nuts on one side and then Noah Anderson on the other. It was Anderson's center clearance that quickly put the Suns back in front. Then he had one of my favorite plays of the entire year where he bursts out of the middle on the center clearance and then has a quick 1-2 with Lockie Weller and scores on the run. It's 2 goals in 14 seconds, and that was the last of the goals. If you had told me at the time, like, that's the final goal being scored in this game, I would have like, no, really? Collingwood did have some late chances. Ned Long had a pretty bad shank that basically it cut it to 6 instead of 1.
Handy point.
But the Suns were able to stave off any real big chances from there. And yeah, it was a really...
It didn't feel like...
I was super entertained.
I was entertained too and frustrated. It didn't feel like a game where, the final goal would be scored with 15 minutes of time on to go still. The final score was with a little under 6 minutes left time on. But again, this is credit to the Suns for being able to slow down the game enough. And one of the next big steps in an evolving team and turning them into a contender is being able to close out those close games. I can't recall many occasions where the Suns have really done that, although this game did have a lot of parallels to last year's ending, where Collingwood had that late surge thanks to a Dacos brother, because Nick had one of his epic plays in this contest last year, but the Suns were able to corral themselves enough late. The credit to the defenders for holding up enough and for winning this in the end, again, without Sam Collins in there. And his replacement, Oscar Adams, in game 2 was quite quiet. Like, in terms of the actual big defenders in this game, I mean, Mac Andrew had the main tall job and did have 7 marks, including 2 contested. I think it was 11 spoils for him. That's a big one, a much better game for him. When his head is in the right space, you can see how high his ceiling is. John Noble, super solid in his first game against Collingwood to the tune of 30 and 8 marks, 6 rebound 50s for him, 8 for Daniel Rioli. Like, the formula for getting the Suns out of defense is pretty tried and true at this point.
The Rioli Formuoli.
Dan Rioli, give me the Suns, Uoli. And then in defense, or I guess wherever, you can have the wild card of Joel Jeffrey, who we remain quite impressed by. Not as prominent in this game as he was in prior ones, but still 6 marks and 7 rebound 50s from 15. We've seen his ability to play across the length of the oval. We're seeing it on the width as well. And we remain surprised by just how good of a halfback he has become. You talked about it before. I've mentioned it. The fact that you got Joel Jeffrey playing halfback and Ben Long playing forward, even though he's been quiet with these past couple weeks, and being such key pieces for this emerging Suns side, it surprises me that they're in those spots as opposed to the other way around. For Collingwood, get into the game sooner. Have Darcy Cameron be your main ruck. As much as I like Mason, I am still not totally sold on him, though I actually get it for this context. I think this is the game, and I labeled it as such when this injury happened. This was the game where Collingwood missed Premiership defender Billy Frampton the most, because you would have had him matching up against Ben King, and he got the Suns off to their flying start. Let's not forget that Gold Coast kicked the first 7 goals of this game, while Collingwood started with 10 behinds. I'm not sure if Frampton himself would be alone to completely turn the outcome of this game, but not saying he wouldn't be.
I think Lipinski would have been the single most useful player that wasn't there. I mean, Collingwood's plus 10 in inside 50s. Like, yeah, Majacek probably would have helped kick straighter, but I just think the delivery as a whole would be better under Lipinski's watch.
With these short weeks for Collingwood, it's not a surprise that they have started managing players, and in one of the tougher fixtures, I'm not surprised either, especially with head-to-head not being any sort of tiebreaker, and, they're still 6 points clear, which is...
They're fine.
They're the minor premiers.
This was a game they could afford to lose, and I think they got some lessons out of it that will help them in the long run.
I think it really showed that they were willing to lose this game, and I'll stay with that. Western Bulldogs, 15-8-98, defeated by the Adelaide Crows, 16-13, 109. This is the statement victory that we have been asking if the Crows could get, and not just against any opponent and anywhere, but on the road in front of more than 41,000 at Marvel. Oh, right. Don't get that at Ballarat.
This is officially the we demand to be taken seriously game for the Crows. I had said, they had yet to impress me outside of the Adelaide Oval. And in this game, they absolutely did. They were just the better team start to finish. They won the midfield. I'm starting to respect their defense more and more, which I thought at the start of the year would have been something of a weakness. I thought the midfield was the biggest weakness. Both of those things look really good right now. And obviously the forward group remains excellent. Riley Philthorpe and Taylor Walker both found ways to impact the game beyond just the forward 50, which I know Philthorpe's done some of, but Walker, that's really something we hadn't seen in I don't even know how long.
It's something we've been waiting for Walker as well, because we've seen Philthorpe and Fogarty be those full field marks, and while Walker could still have his goal-kicking form, and he had 2 in this game, we're just waiting for him to play a similar or fuller field role. You had the entire WTF going well for the Crows. Walker with 2, Fogarty with 3, and 6 goals straight, a new career high for Riley Philthorpe. The only reason that it took this long for him to become this force to be reckoned with that everybody recognizes is because he tore his meniscus last year. This was so obvious that it would be coming along. Do I want to say from his debut in Launceston? And he didn't have the right folks to match up against pretty much anybody, or the matchups I'd say were botched by the Bulldogs in defense. It wasn't just in the defensive 50 either.
I liked the idea of Rory Lobb taking Philthorpe. It just didn't work.
I didn't like the idea, looking elsewhere, of Bailey Truck Williams being on Jordan Dawson, because Williams isn't that same type of runner.
Yeah, that was dumb.
I was wondering, when Matt Kennedy was being so quiet in the first half, I asked around halftime, I texted you, I posted it, should Kennedy be going to tag Dawson? It would get him around the ball, would get him more into the game, but that was never something that happened, and you can see some of the perils of Luke Beveridge being a tag-averse coach.
I mean, there are so many other things you could have done. You could have thrown Cooper Hines into that spot. You could have just done something with one of Kennedy or Libba or Bond, and instead...
Even Frazier, who was not as prominent.
No, he had a down game.
You had options is the point. This list, you've got everything that you need. It's a matter of deployment.
More than everything you need. And yet, they did not do anywhere near enough. I just think they didn't give Dawson the respect he deserved. And then you also had things like just spots where guys got outplayed, such as Rory Lobb getting beaten by Riley Philthorpe. That happens. That's whatever. Riley O'Brien probably outplayed Tim English. He was effective beyond ruck contests, which has been one of the more impressive things over the last couple months from the Crows, that O'Brien has use beyond just hit ball. As good as Marcus Bontempelli and Ed Richards were, the Crows had the better midfield, and that was largely because of Isaac Cumming and Jake Saligo, and obviously Dawson. I thought Cumming was terrific and just doing a lot of the little stuff that didn't show up in the stat sheet. Was just in the right place at the right time. Only credited with 14 disposals, and it felt like a whole lot more.
We talk a lot about per-touch impact, and you definitely felt that with Cumming. Even if you're an uncontested player, it's moving things along. 2 marks inside 50 and a goal for him. 2 assists as well, so
5 score involvements and 3 intercepts off of just 14 touches.
That sort of ratio, that's a Brad Close type shit.
Whereas Saligo only had 1 score involvement and 2 intercepts off of his 22 disposals. but he also had 9 tackles and just provided that physical resistance.
You need that physical resistance because Dawson, while he's a capable tackler and had 8 himself in this game, you don't want him to be the primary one there. You want him to be enabled as one of those first movers.
Braden Cook totally won me over in this game. He had a head clash with Rory Lobb midway through the third quarter and got ruled out early in the fourth. So the Crows had to finish the game down a man, but also they had gotten up. Like at the time of the injury, it was about a 20-point game, and they got the lead out to 27 at one point. So it ended up being a non-factor, but I think Cook made a really good case to be in this team when he's back healthy.
2 assists and 3 inside 50s from just 7.
Like, he's already making a case to be my Crows sleeper for next year. And just like seeing the evolution out of guys like him and Sam Barry, this is clearly just a team that's, the depth is getting so much better. And again, now that they have a huge win outside of the Adelaide Oval, I think it's time to give this team the respect and credit they deserve. I don't know where this team's ceiling is. I don't know if they could go the whole way. I still don't really like their midfield to hold up. I'm becoming more and more of a believer in the defense. And yes, the midfield did it in this game, but like, if you had to go in there again against like, and I say this despite the fact that they beat Brisbane, like, I'll take Brisbane's midfield over the Crows, but I'm becoming more and more of a believer of what they're doing. They're not just reliant on a couple players. And yeah, they just cleanly won this game. They didn't just win, they won convincingly. Now, if you're the Bulldogs, you could look at this 2 different ways. One is Joel Frazier and Matt Kennedy had down games. They've been so good all year, they were due for a stinker. It happens. On the other hand, I think there is some concern with your defense not being able to contain top opposing tall forwards, Tim English getting outworked in the middle, and some of the decisions, like, even if you're apprehensive of a formal tag, like, are you really not going to put one of your top guys on Jordan Dawson? Even if you don't fully tag him, like, just match up with him with someone who is more deserving of that. Like, no disrespect to Bailey Williams, he's a good player, but that is not the matchup for him. And you continue to throw Nick Caulfield in there defensively. It's like,
while Liam Jones and Jed Busslinger are waiting in the 2s.
Buku Kanis as well. Even though
Right,
he's more of a swingman, just like,
he'd been the sub and now he's out.
I like the idea of a versatile tall sub. I just, it's, so again, like, how do you look at this if you're the Dogs? I still don't want to like label these guys as flat track bullies because like they have the GWS win. They have chances in the coming weeks to really prove themselves with the game at the GABA, another meeting with GWS. But like, there's plenty of reason at this point to question them, even though, I mean, if you just line them up on paper, is there ever a game you won't take what they've got?
Again, it's like the Madden ratings. You would have this team as like one of the top rated on Madden every year just because of the pure talent that they have in any sort of video game. And it's probably the case with AFL 25. But why are the Dogs in the place they are? What's their record against the top 8 now? 1-7. All 7 of their losses are to the current top 8.
Yeah, and the one win is GWS, who they've dominated over the years.
And in Canberra, where they've had an easier time against them too.
Now, to be fair, that Collingwood loss, they get a pass because that was a game that they were so badly injured for and still represented themselves very well.
And that also had one of the more ump ball games.
And I'll give them a pass for the Suns loss because that was in Darwin, and once again, they put up a good showing. Could even give them a pass for the Geelong loss off of X-Score, but then you have games like the Hawthorn game where they just came out and looked so flat. With a huge proven opportunity at the GABA this week. This is your last real chance to go out and prove something outside of Victoria.
It's their last game outside of Victoria, period.
Yeah, which is kind of nuts. I was just going to say that as well.
It really could come down to a proven to make finals game closing round because they're hosting Freo. Like, that could easily be a round 24 Sunday game. And then there's a world where they might still have to wait on a result from the Suns, but you'd expect the Suns by that point would be in finals and playing for like better position.
Yeah, I would think so.
But yeah, super pleased with this Crows result, a continuation of good trends for them. Also, Dan Curtin's arms, holy shit, I didn't realize just how ripped he is with his upper body. Like, he must have gotten on that Raleigh Philthorpe regimen. and impacted the game in a bunch of different ways, still being that really strong mark. Curtin with 7 marks and is 26 disposals a career high for him? It is joint career high, and that feels like a more legitimate one than the 26 he got against Richmond 2 weeks prior.
And don't get me wrong, he was great in that Richmond game, but higher degree of difficulty here. And just, this is, it's funny because he was, through the draft, he was supposed to be a defender, right? And he was considered, a possible number 2 pick. He ended up dropping down to
number 8, and the Crows had this plan all along of just waiting until the last chance to trade up for him. That was done really well. And we're going to be complimentary of the Crows list staff, not just with their build, but also because we have interacted with one of those guys on socials. It's Binook, the guy who works for Duke.
Dan Curtin is, I don't know if you could quite call him a unicorn, but over 80% disposal efficiency, once again, with nearly half of his possessions contested, 8 score involvements, 8 intercepts. And if you look at the heat map, he's doing this in so many different spots. He's what's really changed the equation for the Crows the most, I think. As much as we can talk about how much better Josh Worrell and Max Michaelaney have gotten, as much as we can talk about the group of tall forwards, to have this wild card that you can pretty much just deploy anywhere at any time has become a real X factor, and I don't think most teams have a matchup for him.
I would love to see the collective heat map of him from the past 4 weeks, because that's the time in which he's really shown his greatest versatility. Even 5 weeks, actually, going back to that Brisbane game where he was one of the cleaner players in the range. Just, you're right, how many different spots he's impacting, and I'm surprised at some points that he wasn't thrown back into defense more, but if it's not broken, why fix it?
There's only one player I can think of right now that I'd love to see match up with him.
Will we get another chance to see that this year?
It would have to be in finals.
Mark Blitzovs?
Yes, the former steeplechaser.
Oh, yeah, right. Mark Blitzovs was a steeplechaser, and Shannon Neal was a sprinter somewhat, right?
Something like that, I don't know. But Mark Blitzovs, the former steeplechaser.
No, I'm going to compliment Shannon Neal because there isn't that much else to compliment from Geelong from this Saturday. Neal's 5 goals straight were nice, though. And he contributed the 4th goal for Geelong. Geelong scored the first 3 goals, 4 of the first 5, in fact. Greater Western Sydney Giants, 17-9-111, defeating Geelong 13-7-85.
Yeah, you know how Cats should have absolutely won the home game against GWS? That was not the case here. This went really poorly outside of the first few minutes. The Giants were just clearly the better and faster team. I think it's just a matchup thing largely, but game plan-wise, I thought there were some really dumb moves. For example, I assume the conversation was something like, hey, coach, how do you plan to slow Finn Callahan down? Slow who down? And then Max Holmes, one of the only players with the speed to really match up with that GWS midfield, was taking kick-ins and playing on the wing. Combine that with just Lecalier turning into God to make up for Sam Taylor's absence. GWS forwards having position all night and just dominating physically. As strong as Zach Guthrie is, he is not the right matchup for Jake Stringer. And then trying to bomb it in against tall defenders because Tyson Stengel was out again. Plus, just how many times did GWS get on a huge run, whether it was down the wing with Darcy Jones or through the middle with Finn Callahan, and this was not close.
The only reason it looks as close as it did is because Geelong were able to mash the goal output in the 4th quarter, but the game was well over by then. I'd say all of my doubt was erased after Aaron Cadman kicked his 4th straight goal, his 5th for the game, as the opener of the final term. Cadman, 6-1, 8 marks from 15. He's arrived.
And then he signed a new contract to stay at GWS through 2030.
He's kicked goals in all but 2 games this year, by the way. Now up to 32, which is already a career high for him.
I'm disappointed just because it was fun joking about the possibility of, getting him and having him, with all the Geelong sponsors, but it is objectively cool that he's going to stay with GWS. And he matched up with Connor O'Sullivan and just pretty cleanly beat him from start to finish.
I don't think you could be upset with O'Sullivan. Definitely an elevated level of responsibility for him. And with Tom Stewart not being 100% clearly, and Jack Henry, you prefer him as the sweeper and more free defender, that's a tough spot for O'Sullivan. I don't think the defensive game plan there was bad. I think they were just, okay, Ed Hockley, you can say it.
The defender was just overpowered.
See, that doesn't bother me. Sometimes that's going to happen. I think this is the most points Geelong have allowed all year. And that just happens.
No, it's the rest of the strategy. Holmes in that super weird role. I don't know if he's playing through something, but he's the one guy that I would have be on Callahan, just like stuck to him in a defensive job. Yes, you could get him free once you've got possession in the back, maybe, but so few players can run with Callahan, and Holmes has the speed and the tenacity to do that. So that was incredibly strange. And like, as talented as the bulk of this Giants list is, even when you still have Josh Kelly in there, I mean, Kelly had a lesser game. You could have somebody matching up against Tom Green physically right on the ball. But this is another game where it's really cemented. Finn Callahan is the tsunami. He is the player most emblematic of it. He has the ability to start the passage, but that's more often the Lockie's. Happy 250th to Lockie Whitfield, by the way. But whenever he gets involved in a play, Callahan can accelerate, can take the next angle. This just screams like a year where he's going to be totally robbed of an All-Australian Blazer, where he completely deserves it. But I have a feeling because he's a Giant, he's not going to get it, and Lockie Ash will be their only representative. That Tom Green maybe as well. The Tom Green efficiency arc is continuing.
I'm comparing the way he's playing to like the best version of Jordan Dawson in a lot of senses. You know, he has the physicality, the ability to stretch the field. I guess the difference that you could really point out is that maybe Dawson takes some different angles, whereas Callahan is more like straight through. But
no,
like,
Callahan, I think Callahan is very good at moving play outside to in, maybe less so inside to out. No, he's got
probably should be. He should be in Brownlow discussions as well, honestly. And I get that he and Tom Green would take votes from each other, but I think over time people are going to start to figure out who Finn Callahan is. Just he's a star. That's all there is to it. He's a superstar.
This is another game where I'm not sure if we learned anything new. Just the ways.
I think I learned some things.
I thought that the ways that the Giants won this game were predictable to me. Lecalier becoming God against Geelong again is not surprising. It's going to be really fun if he does go to the Saints, because, of course, they're also major thorns in the Cats' side.
Yeah, which that would be quite annoying. But, like, I mean, Chris Scott said this in his post-game comments. You know, if you assumed how GWS would win, it would be, you know, the players that did it were the players that you expected. But I'm just frustrated because, I mean, there will be a couple of pain-in-the-ass games remaining on the schedule, but really, other than possibly Sydney, this might be the last time before finals the Cats really have a chance to get after it against a finals-level team. Like, St. Kilda's a pain in the ass and a shitty matchup.
Could easily drop that.
I feel much better about it at home, don't get me wrong, but it's still don't feel great. And as we'll talk about the Saints later, they've played better and just haven't had to translate to wins. But Port, injured husk of a team. Essendon, even worse. North, we'll see which version of them shows up and how they are health-wise. It's frustrating because this was a real chance to show something. Now, this is still a team that's performed very well against other finals caliber teams and has 3 big-time wins. Collingwood, Hawthorn, and at Adelaide. Because remember, when I've talked about big-time wins, like, it has to be not your home environment. So that's where, like, the Bulldogs and Suns wins, as great as they are, kind of get, like, excluded from that. We can talk about how this affects top 2 chances and things like that. I still feel decent about that. My issue is just, like, to get into finals and be months removed from a really big-time win. And while I still like the idea of heading into finals with a pretty healthy team, with guys well-rested, to have gone that, you know, and lost your last couple of games against teams that you really could have made a statement against is something that gives you a reason for hesitation. And I think out of this, I'm just resetting my expectations. Like, this is absolutely still a team that can win the whole thing. This is a team that can be every bit as good or better than every team out there, but I don't see them at this point distinctly better than any of the other, like, finals hopefuls. Like, I still see Collingwood probably a cut above. And while I can get into this some other time, talk about how I do prefer how the Cats match up with Collingwood than with a lot of teams, like, I am definitely I'm less confident in this than I was just a couple weeks ago. And I think that's fair. Richmond 6-10-46 defeating Essendon 4-13-37.
Fuck this game, but also fascinating game.
I have yet to watch this. I actually kind of look forward to watching this. I mean, maybe this will be, I think I've talked about this before. This could be one of those.
Saints North 2023 round 8.
No,
Baby making footy.
no, I had likened it to, maybe this will be like the hit game show. How long can you listen to Scrotum with Booger Balls on audiobook and not vomit? But we'll see. Maybe there's actually going to be some fun to it. Maybe it'll put me to sleep.
I actually don't think this would qualify as baby making footy because it stayed a contest the whole way. I mean, the largest margin in this game was 10.
Yeah, like baby making footy is more like, a game that's in that like 5-ish goal window.
5-ish goals? Geez, that's like nearly 4 into this game. We had 1 goal in the middle quarters. You know how long it's been since that happened?
Like 10 years?
Try 69 years.
Nice. Now, I assume that discounts 2020.
I don't think so. The way Swamp put it, this was the first VFL-AFL game since 1956 round 5, in which 1 goal or fewer was scored in the middle quarters. There are no qualifiers to that post. Yeah, I mean, I nearly fell asleep on this multiple times, but I was just compelled by the thought of, hey, at least we're staying close. Hey, remember when Essendon started 3 goals straight?
I remember.
Yeah, that actually happened. What to take away from this? Yeah, hell of a debut, Taj Houghton. Let's start with that. I can see why he was so hyped up and was thought of as a potential like top 5, top 10 prospect until he had some injuries. Only 10 disposals, but a goal and 3 tackles, 3 inside 50s. The early involvement was solid and got the crowd going. He had Richmond's second goal. He also had early on, was it a goal and then a center clearance bang bang for Elijah Sadas, which is like, told you so. Again, yes, it's against Richmond, but this is a Richmond with a healthy midfield. You've got all of Hopper, Prestia, Taranto in there. You've got Morris Rioli Jr. contributing a bit. This is a team that can heavily pressure still. And this was a tackle-heavy, stoppage-heavy game, and those styles suit Richmond. Nankervis certainly got the better of Goldstein, and that's part of it there. The hit-out numbers were kind of similar. In fact, hit-outs, I think, were really plus 12 to Essendon, but it didn't feel like it because Richmond were able to create more off theirs. They're only -2 in clearances despite that disparity. I'm not going to be super complimentary of any of the efforts for getting inside 50 when so little was made off that, and the entries oftentimes weren't the best, but Tim Taranto, a persistent thorn in Essendon's side in this game, a goal and 5 clearances from 34. Yeah, nobody had more than 7 clearances in this game. Definitely a team effort in a lot of manners. Defensively, Nick Vlostone, happy 250th, the best defender of this generation to not get an all-Australian Blazer, which to me still seems like a travesty. Had a couple plays late that really mattered, including the last big spoil of the game. I like that he was given a full guard of honor, definitely someone who deserves it. It's Richmond's 4th win of the year. There are a lot of ways in which, of course, it doesn't feel satisfying given the collective scoring for this game was 10-23.
I mean, if you're Richmond, though, you now have more wins than probably even the most optimistic people expected for you.
More than the West Coast Eagles are pretty much guaranteed to get. The spoon's done.
Now, I do think West Coast should beat Richmond this coming week, but like,
I think they should, and it's to the point that careers should end if not. But more on that in a bit. The fact that you had some of the younger players contributing in the important moments too. I talked about Houghton early. The last goal was by John T. Fall, who I continue to like as a contested mark and just contest presence, even if he can't bring in a lot of the marks himself. This was also a return game for Tyler Young in defense, and he had 8 marks at 18 disposals, so great to see him back after he had done his ACL. And considering who Richmond were lacking in this game still, Noah Balta couldn't play because it was too late. A lot of excitement was out of this Richmond team because of no Sam Lawler or Hugo Ralph Smith. And yet you still had a variety of contributors when it mattered in a game that, yes, belongs more on like a VFL back oval in a lot of ways, instead of being in front of more than 52,000. But they got it done. And it doesn't really hurt their draft standing because they have North's first pick.
What's there to say about Essendon other than they're all injured and now Nick Martin's hurt too?
He's done for the year.
Unit lost.
He did his ACL. Are you fucking kidding me? Also, Will Setterfield has a Liz Frank fracture.
Unit lost.
So that could be, 10 to 12 months for him at the very worst of it. Ben Hobbs apparently also did his groin, so he's just about dead now.
And Nate Caddy's out this week. And I mean, we knew that Essendon were going to line up for a bunch of Thursday and Friday night games because mathematically they had put themselves in a position where it was understandable. But
It's Essendon. This arc is going to happen, that they're going to slip no matter what. This year, injuries are a major reason why, and you've still got Sam Durham in there for now, so we can be excited about that. But
the only remaining primetime Essendon game that I can say I'm excited about, I'm low-key excited about the Saints one, even though it's going to be meaningless, because it'll be a chance for the Saints to look good, and they deserve that. But more than anything, I'm just excited about the Friday night at Geelong because I will be there, and I expect good things.
they've got coming up these next 5 rounds while we still have the schedule for that. Thursday, Friday, Saturday afternoon, Friday, Thursday. Oh joy, an already banged up Essendon, banged up to such a degree that they're going to be debuting their 13th player this week. Thank you, Anthony Hudson. 13! I believe that ties a record.
I will say, thank fuck I'm going to Sydney Derby instead of watching Essendon get absolutely rolled by the Dogs.
Thank God that's a doubleheader.
As fun as it would be to watch like a Bontempelli masterclass, I'd rather go explore and see something different.
I am totally with you. One play that I can identify as being super important. In the fourth quarter, this was about midway through, there was a spot where Lamont Lual probably had the chance to kick himself. He picked the ball up on the second effort, so maybe that was what caused him to think otherwise, but gave it off to the now injured Nate Caddy, and he missed. Then coming right down the other way, that's when Jonty Fall kicks what ends up being the final goal of the game with 8.5 minutes left. So that's an 11-point turnaround in past the halfway point of the fourth quarter. And I like Lual. I think what he's already shown, despite not having as high prospects early on, is quite good. I'm excited to see this Essendon team continuing to build, even as their drought is going to pass 8,000 days. It's just fucking frustrating to see how the fixturing is right now and how compromised they are.
I've said this before, like big picture, I think Essendon have the opportunity to make this a very productive year with all the young guys they're getting to get a look at. I also don't have reason to believe that Essendon are going to do it right because they just don't have the track record to make me think they do. But I think the personnel is there.
I do want to add, I think Essendon are probably going to have 2 early picks because they also have Melbourne's from the whole wheeling and dealing that they did in last year's trade period. So they can make a lot out of this unfortunate season, maybe.
They can. I just don't think they'll actually do it.
Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did. How did you know that number, Ethan? Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters. Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed. It's so easy you can edit it while drunk. And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do. Best of all, it's completely free. Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
And welcome back to Americans Watching the Footy. This is episode 251. I'm Ethan Castle, coming to you from South San Francisco, California. Find me on Twitter at Castle Media. Find me on Instagram at Ethan R. Castle.
Oh, wow, you're actually publicizing that. Also on Instagram, we've got at Cat Named Grind for our executive producer, Brian Harambe. How's he doing right now?
He's good. He's resting. I clipped some of the tiny knives attached to his hands a few minutes ago.
That's one way to put it. I'm Benjamin Castle, still in San Diego, at BenjaminHK01 on Twitter. Collectively, we are at Americans Footy, wherever we are on socials, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. The memes have been flowing decently well, and maybe I'll have a bit more time these couple weeks while there's kind of a lull in everything down here to make some more. But for now, let's get back into the games of round 18. Fremantle 12-5-77, defeating Hawthorn 9-10-64. I wish I were assigned this game instead, but that's not how we did the overlap. I had it on kind of in the background the whole time, like in another window, and the trend continues. You know what I'm talking about, right, Ethan?
Caleb Sarong?
Yeah, when he gets now at least 28 disposals a game, and he got 28 in this one, the Dockers are 9-0. Going back to the start of last year, they're 18-4 when he does that. Otherwise, 2-6 this year, 5-12-1 as of the last 2 years.
This is a game that I need to go back and watch again to really fully comprehend. This was a really fascinating game in that it rained at times and it played like wet weather footy in that like it was just a lot of grimy, heavily contested, nobody could get clean hands on it, high pressure football, where really like despite the Caleb Sarong stat, dominance in the middle really didn't lead to success elsewhere. There wasn't a lot of correlation between who was playing well at the source and who was actually scoring. Like, this was kind of a rock fight in a lot of ways. I mean, teams ended up dead even on inside 50s. Dockers had one more clearance. They did have 25 more tackles, but the Hawks had 9 more tackles inside 50. Ultimately, the player who drew the most positive reviews out of this game, and again, I'm going to go back and give this another look. I was also pretty tired when this was wrapping up. But Sam Switkowski, who was the top-rated player, got a perfect 10 in the coaches' votes, and just like a lot of positive reviews altogether from journalists, coaches, broadcasters, etc. 3 goals from 16 disposals.
8 score involvements as well. It's kind of a min-max game for Switkowski, which he's plenty capable of.
19 pressure acts as well. And it's nice to see just both him and Michael Frederick coming along together, because that's something that we haven't seen a lot of between injuries and at times just a reluctance from Freo to kind of play the style that we've said they should be playing. We've talked about how this team has all this speed and hasn't really utilized it as much as they can.
I guess when Freo got out, it started with Sarong kind of accelerating them and then other players capitalizing on the speed. And that was a collective thing. Though again, the lack of correlation between clearance success and scoring meant that it was more winning battles in the midfield and getting, 2-3 clean disposals in a row in a game, in a pretty hotly contested game.
Nobody's efficiency ratings were that high if you had decent number of contested possessions. Like I said, the wet conditions seem to have played a factor in that, although it wasn't that wet. I think it was just kind of the combination of the two. The high pressure and the wet conditions kind of added up.
Yeah, those
Sam Switkowski, though, 8 score involvements out of those 16 disposals, and with 6 contested, he was still at nearly 94%, but otherwise, a lot of lower efficiency numbers. And Sam Mitchell kind of brought into question after the game, just his team's ability to finish off these sorts of games and go play on the road, and it's kind of highlighted in a sense just that they're still not all the way there maturity-wise.
I mean, I guess this was a bit of a younger Hawthorn team and one that, again, still lacks Will Day. Nice return for Cal Sherdeer, I'll mention. 3 goals straight from 9. Cal Sherdeer is good for footy.
Just easily one of the more likable members of this Hawthorn team on a team that we don't have a lot of positive things to say about. Well, I mean, we have positive things to say about the actual football, but we don't have a lot of positive things to say about just like wishing them well. He's an easy one to get behind. He seems like a really good kid.
And I like most of what Jai Newcomb does as well, but he also looks like he could be Grayson Waller's tag team partner with how easily he sells things.
There's one from last week against the Saints in particular, now that I've gone back and seen that game, where he sold this push in the back so badly.
It's like he'd been shot.
It was a Brad Hill push. He looked like, a kid getting pushed into a swimming pool, like not knowing that someone was going to push him from behind, like the way he flailed.
Largest lead of this game was 13 both ways. When was the point where you realized Frio had it won, or was there ever a point where you thought Hawthorne had it won?
No, it was just kind of back and forth the whole way, and then after Josh Tracy made it an 11-point game with 6:45 left, it felt pretty good, and then they were able to just kind of make sure Hawthorne didn't have many chances from there, other than there's one where Nick Watson had a chance bouncing along the boundary and lost it, and then you had the ending scenes with bloody Andrew Brayshaw. He caught a knee to the head. I think it was from Luke Jackson trying to take a hanger on him. He's bleeding, but he's still like pumping up the crowd after, knowing that pretty much they've got the game won. And then he got interviewed on the field post-game, like blood all over him. So that was a great scene.
Real Wharfy time stuff.
I loved, was it the Purple Rain pod? I forget which, I think it was. They're usually the ones that like do a funny banner for each week. Yeah, it was the Purple Rain. We follow a lot of really fun Frio people. This is way up there among my favorite, though. The Fox Footy tweet, Sam Mitchell has described Hawthorne's 13-point loss to Fremantle last night as a punch to the stomach, before adding the Dockers fortress became too much for his side. And Purple Rain tweeted, translation, once Wharfy time came on, I shit my pants. These guys are so fun.
The fourth quarter, 4-4 to no goals, 2. I was just shocked that Hawthorne lacked that sort of control. The supply dried up for them. Their smalls got quiet when they'd been propelling a lot. You talked about Watson having a chance. While he only had 8 disposals, he did kick 1. He just had that mosquito fleet popping up at important times before that. A goal each to Ginnivan and to McDonald as well. I think McDonald with 2 assists too. So once Frio got some better clearance in the fourth quarter, better stoppage success, it meant the mosquito fleet couldn't do their thing. And Sarong and Brayshaw did a lot to close out the game. The fact that Frio won despite having fewer scores also stands out to me, although Hawthorne did have 4 rushed behinds. It was, I believe, all 3 of the final goals were from set shots. And, Frio's accuracy has been so-so for a lot of this year, but all of Voss, Darcy, and Tracy converting in the fourth.
And that was also something where, you can find a lot of the, credit a lot of the success to who's taking these shots. I'm just so impressed big picture. We were understandably like very, very harsh on this team earlier in the year. We were super critical. They were underutilizing their talent. And I think at this point, they're in a situation where, yes, they still do like play to what Justin Longmuir wants, which has its pros and cons. I think it's like the Saints game was a great example of how, like, whether they're trying to or not, it's more likely to be a close kind of like super physical contested game. But they've opened things up enough to the point that they're using their speed. They're playing to their capabilities way more. And it's become just, they're not repressing their talent as much.
They're not showing that they used to be coached by Ross Lyon as much, or that their coach worked under Adam Simpson.
The Adam Simpson stuff, we hardly see at all. When I think of, reminding them that they're an Adam Simpson team at times, is like, the way they'll like switch across the field. But even that they haven't done a ton of, which is something I don't oppose, for the record.
Yeah, I wonder
used
if
properly, and with the speed they have, if you can use that switch to open up like the other side of the field, I'm totally in favor of it.
I wonder if Alex Pierce's absence has explained some of that.
I don't think so. I just think that's just meant, Luke Ryan and Brennan Cox have had to step up a little more, both of whom have been better lately.
But that's meant it's like occupied them, and they haven't been as free to sweep and like get that first ball maybe from Pierce. So that's where I think that comes in. But no, I'm pleased with this game, pleased with the crowd, over 49,000. Part of that was definitely for the send-off of Michael Walters, which was done quite well.
Yeah, obviously sad to see him go, but he got cheered off with a full guard of honor from both teams. Well done. Michael Frederick and Shea Bolton, or Michael Bolton and Shea Frederick. I think that would be a little more interesting. But having those guys cheer him off, that was fun. That was very neat.
Who is Shea Frederick?
I don't know.
Apparently, Shea Frederick with a Y is a women's basketball assistant coach at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay.
Their women's program's actually been decent.
Unlike their men's program, Gottlieb,
Their men's program is coached by a radio host.
who still has his full-time radio job. I know that there are parallels to this with like Daniel Harford and Carlton in AFLW in prior years, though. Also, who was Michael Walters' last game against?
Was it last year or this year?
In a sense, this year.
Was it the Indigenous All-Stars game against Rio?
Ding, ding, ding.
Cool.
That's trivia for you.
You wish hindsight being 2020. It would have been cool if he could have gone into that knowing it was going to be his final game and send-off. That would have been nice.
That's the type of thing where you like would even consider a testimonial type thing where he does a half with each side.
Yes. But anyway, job well done. Great career. We'll miss you. Hopefully he stays connected to the game.
To Sunday.
This Sunday had no right to be as fun as it was, with one game that maybe in an unlikely scenario could have something to do with finals. No team within the top 9, only one with an even slightly reasonable chance of making finals, and even that's highly unlikely. But I was thoroughly entertained through all 3 games, and I'm happy about that.
It started with Melbourne doing something very good. I was very glad that right at the end there was a behind. Forget who missed that last shot. I
think Jefferson?
It was Jefferson. Well, he did the right thing because he brought up the best score of all. Melbourne 18-11, 119, defeating North Melbourne 12-11, 83.
Have you considered getting a customized license plate?
Port 119?
Or just LOL 119 or 07GF 119?
That's a you thing. You're the Geelong fan.
I know, but you're the one who likes to hammer this joke home.
I do it partially for your sake because you're the Geelong person. Just like pointing out 119s.
I had this on in the background. It was kind of a casual watch, but it seemed, outside of the first few minutes being a bit of a drag, pretty compelling. And just talk me through it, because I don't have much to say in the way of observations.
This was a game where Melbourne's potential was on a greater display. Their setups were more varied. They were more accurate for their set shots. That's somewhat replicable recipe for success for them. And, while it was against most certainly a lesser opponent and a North Melbourne lacking a lot, I still am just more positive about Melbourne getting things done, shaking off an early burst from North where they got 3 in a row. They took the lead by the middle of the second quarter, and even though it got a little hairy in the third, didn't relinquish it from there. Worked out the margin when they went on a run of 6 of 7 goals, spanning the later part of the third to the middle of the fourth. Jake Melksham stepping up again. Melksham now with his first ever streak of 3 games with at least 4 goals. He finished 5-1 from 10. And a lot of the success is due to, no surprise, the big 3 or 4 in the middle from Melbourne. Max Gawn definitely outdid Tristan Cherry, so we can start with that. Do I think this game alone should determine Gawn being the All-Australian rook over Cherry? No, I think Cherry overall might have had the more consistent season, though Gawn had that stretch in like May and June, like into early June, where he was on fire, and probably gets quite a few votes from that stretch.
Can I throw in something else?
Is it Darcy Cameron?
Yes.
Before the past couple weeks, I'd be much more on that wagon. I wasn't surprised by Melbourne winning this game. I wasn't surprised that they were able to win in the middle. Look who this North side was without. This was their first game in, I think, about a decade where they had none of Luke Davies-Uniacke, Nick Larkey, or Luke McDonald. And just the way that added up across the full length of the oval felt pretty obvious. And then when North lost the pace, just small errors compounded on themselves. Decent job punishing from Melbourne, getting more setups off turnovers in the forward 2/3. And shorter setups were more common. I was super pleased with that. With Melbourne, you don't expect to be talking about setup kicks. This is a team that just tends to roost it high. Here, though, a lot more to be happy about. How about 3 goal assists along with 3 goals himself for Bailey Fritsch? I never thought I'd say that.
Looked like Jacob Van Rooyen was just more involved as well.
He was 1-1 and an assist from 17. That's positive. Seeing Van Rooyen and Jefferson in there is something that I'd been desperately wanting, and we finally saw it here. And again, though, just Fritsch actually being involved on the setup side surprised me because we usually think of him as just sticking in the forward 50 and not even leading all that much, just being a player who converts on set shots. He did the conversion part today, but also did more as a more active half forward. I think with Melksham doing more of that inside 50 job, Fritsch has had to find more ways to succeed. 3 assists as well for the emerging Harvey Langford.
I guess from North's perspective, you look more at this game as just, you understand what you were without, and you probably liken it somewhat to the performance from the Bulldogs game a week earlier, yeah?
I would say so. I mean, even more pieces missing for this game than you had last week. Huge positive, though, to take out of the 4 goals, 2 from Cooper Harvey. He strung together 2 pretty strong performances, mature outings against tougher lineups and tougher defensive setups. I mean, this is a Melbourne team that still has Jake Lever there in defense and a more steady defensive role for Daniel Turner. You got Gawn who can go back in there. But Harvey picked his spots well, showed the length he can have on his kicks also. And I'm glad he was able to follow up his effort from last week with another one that shows that he has a reason to stay in the side. Also, I think pretty early on both Fox and one of the radio broadcasts, they mistook Jacob Constanti for Cooper Harvey. Now, on that radio broadcast, his father was doing special comments, so he was on the case pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Thanks to Drew Jones from Fox for telling us about that one.
That is funny. That is objectively very funny.
Are you surprised to see how easily Gawn outperformed Jerry?
A little bit, yeah. I just would have thought that this is a game that, both of those guys probably looked at from an individual perspective as, I need to win this matchup one-on-one because I need to make my case to be the All-Australian Rock.
I mean, you're not playing for much else at this point in the year. Outside of that, for North, I'll say Harry Sheasel, I know, got, I believe, 4 coaches' votes for this game, and Colby McKercher got 2. Sheasel sticking with that half-forward role, McKercher being able to kick in a lot of different ways from half back, and having the speed to be able to follow up on his initial disposals is big. I'm glad he's gotten the license to do that this year. That's a big step forward, and it reminds me in a sense of what the club had done with Sheasel. So perhaps there's something there that is replicable in development. More involved game from Tom Powell at the source 2. He had 27, and I know we weren't too complimentary of him last week, so I wanted to mention him here. Unfortunately, the Toby Pink revolution is over, and I also wonder if it was only made possible in the first place by poor performance from Charlie Curnow.
I mean, it was a stretch of a couple of games.
The other big defensive issue I had was the assignment of Will Phillips to Kazi Pickett. Now, I like Will Phillips. I think his ceiling's pretty high, but he's in no way able to defend somebody like Kazi once you get in the forward 50. And it took until around halftime for them to switch off that matchup, by which point Pickett had already had a fair impact and he'd had his goal. Lesson learned. Tristan Jerry Case, he ended up knocking out Tom Sparrow with the stray arm.
Yeah, it was, I think you would have to describe this as careless. I don't think there was any intent behind it, but you have a responsibility to care for the other players on the oval, and he did not do that in this case.
Yeah, it's a 3-game suspension, and I'm surprised it's not more.
I think 3 would be appropriate, and I'm not just saying that because game number 2 out of those 3 is against Geelong, and I really would not mind Rhys Stanley not having to face him, but that has nothing to do with it. I want to emphasize, just watching this play in that moment, or watching it a couple minutes after, because you had told me about it, and I had been into the St. Kilda Sydney game by this point. The point is, I looked at that and it's yeah, you've got to be responsible and take care of the other players out there. And this was, I don't think there was no sort of intent behind this. The term careless is appropriate here.
I'm just surprised because I feel like Connor Nash would be a starting point, and that was 4.
If we're going to compare the two, I think there's a bit of a difference. Jerry, it was kind of it had less to do with going for the ball, but it was kind of in the middle of all of that. Whereas Nash, it was just a stupid late challenge.
Lasting impression of this game to me, a deeper Melbourne team won, and Petrarca fueled the success after Gawn got some of the initial involvement. Petrarca was a statistical leader, kicking 1-2 from 31 with 7 clearances and 5 inside 50s. This is the complete game that we know Petrarca can have on a regular basis. And even in the defeats in prior weeks to Gold Coast and Adelaide, we'd seen signs of it. To have it happen in a win feels gratifying.
Other than Tristan Jerry and Tom Sparrow, who comes out of this like not feeling positive, honestly? Because it seems like a game that you could mostly feel positive about.
Well, I mentioned Phillips and Pink. Otherwise, I mean, even though Colton Tolstrup only got 7 touches, he had a goal. Xavier Lindsay quiet and subbed off. I wonder if he's at risk. Caleb Windsor was the sub and really didn't do much. For the Kangas, it was Finbar Maley who got subbed off. If Nick Larkey's able to come back in, I'd imagine he gets the axe this week. But nothing that's, super objectionable otherwise. I still would like to see Kynan Brown and Jack Henderson both get further cracks at AFL level this year. Kynan Brown has yet to play an AFL game in the 22. And while the pressure was better against this lesser opponent, I wonder if they'd be able to stand up to one of these later on challenges for them without a piece of their like Henderson. This is a very winnable stretch for them coming up with the Blues, the Saints, and the Eagles. And you'll be at the final of those. Speaking of the Saints, I don't have to walk again.
St. Kilda 13-9-87 defeated by Sydney 14-8-92. This was fun. This feels once again, if you're St. Kilda, like you did everything except actually win the game, where they were the better team for probably close to 3/4 of this game, but they were undone by 2 brief stretches, one in the middle of the first and one early in the fourth, where the Swans went on their runs. It was 4 goals in a row in the middle stretch of the first quarter, and then early in the fourth, after the Saints had gone up by 13, Sydney kicking the next 3. Ultimately, the Swans tied it and even took the lead by a point, but Sydney took the go-ahead goal with 3:53 to go. Brodie Grundy tapping down perfectly to hit Errol Golden in stride and golden finish.
Hell of a game from Grundy once again. I think this month or so might be the best stretch yet we've seen from him as a Swan, and that's
I think the first couple months last year are right up there as well.
Maybe it's because the Swans have more desperately needed success now is why it stands out to me more, along with recency bias. But it's been a phenomenal stretch for him is the point.
And no coincidence, when the Swans are playing better, he has a lot to do with it.
Just want to mention, Jake Lloyd, once again kicking goals, is just kind of alarming how quickly he's become this sort of player.
Yeah, we're just like, hey, you're a forward now. Okay. And it's funny because, he had been dropped not long ago.
He hadn't been dropped for a non-injury reason in something like a decade. All of a sudden, since coming back, he's kicked 1, 2, and 3 goals. 7 goals in his past 3 games, which equals his entire output from the start of 2024 to before getting dropped.
Early on, Jack Steele was great, and then he kind of came back to earth. People are starting to appreciate Max Hall's work more. It's funny, people were so high on his game against Hawthorn a week earlier, where honestly, I watched it and I wasn't all that moved, which is funny because I've been #1 Max Hall supporter. I liked him more in this game, and it's just nice that people around the league are starting to appreciate what this kid can do. I thought Brad Hill was mostly good, but there was one play before a goal where he basically didn't want to commit physically, and it ended up being really costly. It was like the Cam Newton Super Bowl play where there's the fumble and he just backs away from it. But overall, he was positive. Liam Henry's getting up to speed again. Hopefully he can actually stay healthy now that we've seen his potential and understand what he's capable of. And then I liked what Angus Hasty showed as kind of a defensive, half mid sort of role. Picked up a few intercepts and just the Saints are doing a lot of things right. It's just, they're just not piecing it together to win games. I believe this is 11 losses in their last 13.
Is that right? I think it is. Wow. Yeah, they started 3-1. And a lot of these losses have been, pretty respectable ones between the opponents and the margins. Even losing by 34 to Collingwood, that was a game where they were
in it for 3 quarters.
Exactly.
This and the Frio game feel the most missed opportunities.
And tended to match up against Sydney well. I really want this to be a double up in future years. I mean, with these teams being somewhat close on the ladder at least, I wonder if this could be a double up next year. The results tend to be close and can lead me to do stupid things. Now, for me, looking to go back through this game and really finalize my votes,
maybe it's one of those things that you only get like in the live moment, but I thought Angus Sheldrick just continues to make smart winning plays. Every week I like him more.
Come home.
James Jordan was standing the mark after Naziah was paid a mark that he never had it and it hit the ground. It was clearly not a mark. And then he like fakes Jordan out but gets caught by Sheldrick. Sheldrick also had a couple of assists, and this is one of those guys where, again, the statistical impact does not match what he actually gives you. He had a goal, 2 assists off of 18 touches, like a high impact per touch and high IQ player. Nobody on the Swans actually had more than 6 score involvements. It was him, James Rowbottom, and Jake Lloyd, all with 6.
6.
Woo! It's pretty remarkable to not have anything higher than that in a game where you had 22 scores.
They lost inside 50s by 8, only had 48 of them for the game, but turned that into 92 points between accurate set shot kicking and just making the most of their opportunities. And this is just like, Sydney here is the more seasoned team, more veteran experience, and more capable of winning a game like this.
Gotta say, when I was really engaged with the fourth quarter of this game, I loved what I was able to see out of Will Hayward helping turn the tide and close things out. He had 2 goals that ended up giving the Swans a 5-point lead, not the final lead, of course. There were another couple changes, but then he went back and took one of the really important marks in defense late. Hayward is someone I regularly say is the barometer for this Swans team, and I'm going to keep saying it because it's true. When he succeeds, the team succeeds. Nobody for Sydney actually had more than 23 disposals in this game. So more made from less for a lot of this playing group. I feel like that's off of the mode for, say, Justin McInerney with his 4 clearances from 20. A bit error-prone, especially with the longer kicks, and a bit reckless, but positive contributions.
McInerney has only had a couple of games where he's like really played up to that level that we saw last year, but he's still been quality as of late. I just still always believe there's like another level he can get to.
Which is scary. Looking at the coaches' votes, yeah, Grundy got the 9, and then Marcus Windhager with 8. Do you agree with the high rating for Windhager?
I do think he was the best Saint in this game. Between both the pressure he put on and the actual work he did with the ball, he finished with, 36 disposals, 8 marks, little under a third of his possessions contested, just under 89% efficiency and 8 score involvements. And there were a couple of plays where he was just like attacking from different angles and showing some really high football IQ.
We've seen the physical work for him. Now that he's actually getting the volume as well, I'm continuing to be impressed by him because I didn't think of him as someone who'd be able to really thrive in like a 30 touch per game kind of role. But this is the natural progression that this midfield needs as guys like Steele age out.
Little bit of a hot take. As good as Naziah Wanganeen-Milera is, I think the Saints might at times be just a little overly reliant on him.
I don't think that's a really hot take at all. I'm in the same boat with you. I think part of it is that it's marginalized other guys like Sinclair, and that maybe Naziah's use in the forward half has questionable efficiency.
And it probably also doesn't do them any favors. Now that Liam Henry's getting back, you just have less of a need to rely on that.
So how would you like Naziah used then in context of the other players?
I mean, I still think he's important for Moon, but I think you just don't have to like build the whole ship out of him because you have other capable options to the point where like he should probably be your primary option, but he doesn't need to be like the entire thing. Like, it's nice to know that he can do that when needed. But again, plenty of other guys I'd like to see get those opportunities so that maybe you've got options when either he's getting tagged or just is less effective altogether.
Saints still have a chance to turn things around and turn these narrow losses into credible wins for the end of the season. Softer landing, perhaps with Melbourne, North, Richmond, and Essendon coming up rounds 20 through 23. And Geelong is always a matchup that they tend to play well. That's coming up next, even though it is down the highway.
I look at St. Kilda, Port, and Sydney, and Essendon kind of all fit, some for different reasons, but in that category of teams that could make a big jump next year from where they are right now.
Sydney's feels obvious, and they've got North before going to the showground for the Derby. As we have established, their margin for error is gone. God, it would be so funny if the Eagles fucked things up round 24. They won't, but it would be funny.
Speaking of the Eagles, Port Adelaide, 12-15-87, defeated West Coast 9-7-61.
This is less of a fuck do we really have to and more, all right, there actually are things to take out of this game.
Good. I mean, that's really what you want out of most weeks, right?
Yes, at the same time, I have conflicting feelings about this game. The Eagles only won a single quarter. They started out well again. I mean, there are vibes to this that are similar in some ways to the showing at the GABA earlier this year. The fact that you can stick with a game as long as you can on the road is satisfying. However, kind of putting wallpaper over some of the structural problems of the drywall here, 27 scores to 16 feels more accurate than a 26-point loss, even though Port did pile on some of those goals a little late.
I mean, wouldn't you also feel pretty good about, I mean, how do you compare? You've had games where you've had one quarter that's an absolute shit show and three that are good. In this one, you're kind of on the other side of that. I mean, do you kind of look at that as a positive, or?
There's still disappointment. Disappointment that this is still the worst team of the AFL era. Disappointment that this team can only win one quarter, even when they're given a lot of opportunities. Like when Port kicked 2-6 in the third.
It felt like, as someone who was watching this casually after the Saints game had ended, it felt like they were up against it, territory-wise, for sure.
Yes, it felt like they were holding on for dear life, and I was waiting for this to change to it was fun while it lasted mode. That was definitely the collective feeling in the Eagles fans' Discord as well. And it just, look, you knew they weren't actually going to win this game, right? Don't be silly.
To be fair, this was a pretty badly injured Port team, and now they're even more injured.
Yeah, Connor Rosie was subbed out with a hand issue, and then Jason Horn-Francis broke his foot. That's his season.
Unit lost.
Fuck. Still one of the best for Port in this game. Did he get the 10? No, he got 9 along with Zach Butters. Fair enough. What a way for the horny one to go out for the season. Shame that he does have to be sidelined now. Well, this could boost Butters' America's Brownlow and maybe real Brownlow hopes. I do like Joe Richards
It's not
getting...
the real Brownlow. Our Brownlow is just as real. It's the umpire's Brownlow.
All right, there. I do like Joe Richards getting the 5 votes as well. Richards, I think, is just a very instinctually good player at half forward, and now that he's getting consistent opportunity at Port where he couldn't last year at Collingwood, that's being showcased a bit more. Richards kicking 2-3 from 23. I think another more accurate shot for goal, and we might see him even higher into Brownlow consideration for this contest. Unsurprising developments for the Eagles, especially look at their early success. Liam Baker going center and half forward, working way better than having him off the back flank. I know that most of the time they're starting their play from the back, but Baker kind of occupied the spot where Tim Kelly normally would. And I hope that's not completely compromised when Kelly comes back in this next week against Richmond. And good chaos early from Matthew Owies, although he trailed off from there. I was glad to see him get back in. Things that I didn't like. Tyrell Dewar and Liam Duggan in defense do not work. I'm sorry. Dewar belongs more half forward. His long kicking accuracy is not there. And Duggan kicking out of defense, you remember what I said last week. There is no better pairing in Australian football than Liam Duggan and indiscriminate kicks out of defense. If he's going to be involved, I'd like for it to be more toward the center and more of a handball operation and doing grimier things, letting Elijah Hewitt maybe roll a bit more freely as a result. That's a spot where Tom McCarthy should have had more of the responsibility kicking for the back. It would have also been a way to get Brady Hoff more into the game because he struggled to touch the ball and finished with only 9 for the contest. And I also have, strong thoughts about Brady Hoff belonging in defense.
Now, who kind of worked to limit him?
I don't think anybody really limited him. I think he was just unable to get to it and was beaten in the middle. So credit there to Butters with his 38, Horn-Francis, Wines. Collectively there, they were solid. Polished turd, I didn't expect that you're going to agree with me that it's going to go to Harry Edwards with his 9 intercept marks.
I'll have to look at it, but I know he was recognized in the coaches' votes, and for a defender to get recognized in coaches' votes like that,
despite a loss,
usually means he's been pretty damn good.
It was just pretty obvious that this game was going to turn against West Coast. They were minus 13 for stoppage clearances at halftime, and the pressure was starting to drop. I was surprised that they even held on to lead by 11, let alone lead at all before the long break, and even more so through the third term. Another player that I'm going to continue to compliment is Job Shanahan. Shanahan, once again, got a guy holding the ball, and it's just so awesome to see that for a dude who's around 6'5", consistently being a willing tackler. It was his only tackle for the match, but he picked his spot well, kicked 1-1 from 11 with 4 marks. He just thinks through play really well. I want him to be wearing number 17 because as of this week, we know Jack Graham has shown he doesn't deserve it.
Who was 17 before?
Josh Kennedy.
Gotcha. So that is...
And yeah, this was an Eagles team that lacked, what was it, 4 of the 6 members of their leadership group or something like that? There was no Liam Ryan because he was a laid out. Jack Graham, self-reported using a homophobic slur, and was suspended for 4 games. Not going to go into discourse about what suspension length certain things should be compared.
We've talked about it. We don't need to again.
Everybody else does. But no, Shanahan continues to impress me. And Jack Williams, as a late in, kicked 2 goals from 7. It's just like, wait, you weren't even supposed to be here. Good job proving us a bit wrong.
Now, to be fair, they did know that Graham was probably going to be an out as well as Ryan. But still, for someone who was kind of on the fringes of selection, even if they knew they were probably going to be a late in, who's going to go and play like that, you got to be pretty satisfied with it.
Was also very happy to see Rhett Bazzo finally get another AFL game. This was his first of the year. He only played in the closing round last year. He's just had a rotten run with injuries and all sorts of other things. And I want to see him get another one in there. I don't want them to just immediately exchange for Sandy Brock again, just to see if they could work a couple weeks running.
Yeah, it's just like, what is that going to do for development if you have a guy in there just like 1 week because someone else hadn't been playing well?
And I also just want to be able to take the positives from this game and translate it to the eminently winnable game against Richmond next week. Especially with what Richmond showed against Essendon, or kind of lack thereof. Yes, you've got to beat them in the middle or at least stand up to them, but you've got every reason to win in other parts of the Oval.
Where, by the way, it feels really weird to go onto the tipping competition and see 79% picking West Coast.
That'll go more toward 50 as the week goes on.
I don't know. I don't think it'll go that dramatically.
If Liam Duggan and Jamie Cripps, for example, play that game and West Coast lose, their careers should end. It's tough to say many more players because this is a young team, and I don't want there to be excuses. But of course, this is a club that loves to make excuses and refuses to make change quickly enough, so it's probably just extend it for a year instead. See you in finals of 2045. Harley Reid's going to be a Hall of Famer and a double premiership Hawk by then.
Awards?
Yeah, I think that's going to go through the game recaps for us. So let's go on to the awards, starting with Mark of the Week. I was glad to see Alex Toru get rewarded for his leap forward with the flight. Less crowded this week for the Saints, but very high ceiling. And that's not a pun with just his vertical ability. It's just true. The round 18 nominees, not as impressed by any of these. Darcy Moore had a knee to Benlong's neck and shoulder area with Harry Perryman contesting on the ground as well. Josh Tracy had a strong leap with contact to Cenk with Jaff. And Mitch Georgiadis had a knee to Jordan Sweet's neck with Matt Flynn also involved. Not super compelled by any of these, Ethan, but are you?
Shit, I guess Darcy Moore? I don't feel strongly about any.
Neither do I. I guess I'll give Georgiadis a slight edge, but not super compelled.
Goal of the week. Last week, it was Zach Bailey, deservedly. He came out of a forward 50 stoppage, fought off Willem Drew, and kicked a bouncer over Alir. It was very cool. By the way, I just learned, clicking through Wikipedia stuff, Alir is related to Thon and Matur Maker.
I'm not sure if I knew that.
Your round 18 nominees are 3 extremely different plays, all very cool in their own right. We've got Mark Pittenet's 60-meter torp after the quarter-time siren. We've got Noah Anderson's center clearance, 1-2 with Lockie Weller and goal from 31 meters out on the run to put the Suns up 9. And we've got Sam Darcy tapping a ball to himself through a Josh Morrill tackle and finishing on his right from about 40. All 3 of these were very cool in different ways. I'm guessing Pittenet ends up winning, especially because Ruckman and after the siren torp. But what's your preference?
Ruckman? I thought they're not supposed to win these. Kieran Briggs and Rowan Marshall didn't.
I mean, if they're doing Ruckman stuff, they can't. But if they're doing other stuff, apparently it's okay.
Perhaps. I am really liking all of these. you've got a really impressive kick for Pitnet, a half of the oval play from Anderson, and just freakish stuff from Sam Darcy with the size he has. I think I'm going to slightly lean Darcy, but would have no problem with any winner.
I think that's where I'm going as well. Anderson's, if you took out the context, the Anderson one wouldn't be anywhere near as cool.
Well, that was the second of those bang goals, and he was involved with both.
But yeah, I think I'll go Darcy, then Pitnet, then Anderson. But yeah, happy with all of these. Darcy, the little knock onto himself, it was almost like dribbling a basketball. It was really impressive. Behind of the week, last week, we've got Bailey Humphrey receiving an over-the-top handball from Noah Anderson, wheeling around and kicking from 51, and it turns out on review it grazed the post. This week, we've got 8 nominees, so maybe I should do the 7 runners-up, all like, Heyman's kids all in one breath. Hugh McCluggage, Alex Neil, Bolin, Aaron Naughton, Josh Frazier. Yeah, I fucked it up. Sorry, let me try again. Hugh McCluggage, Alex Neil, Bolin, Aaron Naughton, Joel Frazier, Josh Dolan, Jack Innovan, Nick Watson.
The winner being the most unique of the bunch, and Ethan and I worked this out together. I insisted that it was Harley Reid. He had this contest against Alir, claimed a mark when he clearly didn't have it. That's another story. He picked up the Sharon with one hand, just kind of clawed it and missed a high snap to the left. And I really thought for a second, it says a chance to go in. Shit. Never mind.
The whole thing it looked cool. It looked different. I will say, of the other ones, Alex Neil Bolin was cool because he just ripped it away from Joel Frazier in the goal square. Jack Ginnivan tried to kick over his head, which was cool, but wasn't particularly close. Josh Dolan's dribbler from deep in the pocket was a goal initially, was overturned on review, which ended up being a pretty significant moment, I think, momentum-wise. But yeah, Harley's is the most unique and memorable to me.
I think Harley actually is another polished turd candidate from this past week. And while I can say plenty of things that are complimentary of Harley Reid, I'm also fucking irritated by him a lot of the time. It was cool to see him get into stuff with Jason Horn-Francis. I think he said, you went back to Mummy after 1 year, which is funny in the context of everything with him. Again, I still think he probably will, and for the sake of his career, should leave.
I mean, let's see what things look like a year from now, too.
But with his tendency to just get too involved in off-ball stuff and how it could easily get to his head, I almost think that sometimes he acts a bit too much like a 9-year-old selfish younger brother when he needs to be a 20-year-old footy player with natural talent that he needs to be able to hone into something more productive. And as someone who once was that 9-year-old selfish younger brother, I think the comparison is apt. Assist of the week, last week, he had Riley Philthorpe handballing over his shoulder to Ben Keys. That was all off of a Stephen May spoil. Riley Philthorpe, there's not much else you need to say there. The crop this week wasn't nearly as strong, but Ethan spotted this one. I agree with him. Desai Wangadi Miller, I had this check side tick for Cooper Sharman. And even though Sharman dropped the mark at first, he was able to finish it, tapping it through. And just take the vision to get a pass like that off is what impresses me. And see, that's the type of play that we need from Desai, not aimless stuff for the back.
I mean, his vision and ability to kick over and around guys is very impressive. And this one, kind of going check side, not going for goal, was just unique and cool ball use. Worst on round. So as of our last recording, we hadn't come to a conclusion yet on our round 17 worst. I have convinced Benjamin to follow me to select Caleb Daniel. I went back and watched it again, and Jaden Laverde, while he had a difficult game, I didn't think he was that bad. This round, it's Matthew Carroll. He's shown some promise this year. He's been a bright spot for Carlton big picture, but this week he was not one of them.
Now, there were a couple times, I think it was late second quarter, where he was caught holding the ball, bang, bang, and that really stood out.
And it was just a couple of moments was dude, what are you doing? What are you thinking?
I don't want to, harp on him too much. First-year player, still getting accustomed.
I think he's got a bright future ahead of him, but he had a bad game. And remember, multiple players who have been worst on round, including one of his teammates, Nick Haynes, have totally turned it around to redeem themselves.
Last week's main character was Tom Liberatore, who played one of his highest-rated games at his 250th and got the perfect 10. This week, we had a bit of a harder time to decide who it was. I floated the idea of maybe Matt Rowell for the performance he had on the big stage against Collingwood, the first ever Friday night game that the Gold Coast Suns hosted. I want to make sure I mentioned that.
I was half thinking, there was that Lions fan with the shirt with sad, bald Daniel Gorringe. That was funny and cool, but ultimately we settled on Aaron Cadman for kicking 6 goals in the second half and then signing an extension to stay at GWS through 2030, when it seemed like there was a very good chance he was going to be on his way out pretty quickly. For him to have finally started to play like the number 1 overall pick and to do that while he ends up inking an extension makes for a pretty good week for him. So, yeah, he'll be the main character over maybe a less fun but significant story.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. Aaron Cadman has seen the light. He knows what he can be a part of in this new forward order in the Giants 50.
That voice is not easy to maintain, I gotta say, but no, I was hopeful that Cadman would sign on and keep this thing going, even if Jesse Hogan could be managed again this week.
I mean, you could manage a lot of guys this week considering what you're going up against.
I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of teams take this management strategy against Essendon through the rest of the season. It would be really funny if it backfired on one of them, though.
Yeah, like I would say the odds of, say, Patrick Dangerfield playing against Essendon in a few weeks are not high.
Want to mention one more contract extension, by the way. Congratulations to Richmond and to Seth Campbell, because the Tasmanian small forward is now locked up through 2029. That's a huge one for them to get, considering the context of Tasmania and everything else.
And the significance of the passage of time.
The significance of the passage of time.
The significance of the passage of time.
But no, this was one that I'd mentioned I thought had to have been a priority for Richmond, and they flippin' got it done. By the way, the tribunal spent, I think this was well over an hour, arguing over a total of $1,250.
That's awesome for everyone except David Zeta.
Jared Waitley put it simply, they quibbled over $1,250 with a panel of lawyers who will shortly bill for about $30,000.
I will make sure, as you pointed out, I need to go to Schnitz and I need to do it on a Tuesday.
Hey, reach out to Max Lawton while you're in Australia. He responds to us on Twitter, so see if any tribunal shenanigans occur, see if you and Max and Dietz could get something going.
And yeah, at this time next week, I will be on the other side of both the equator and the international dateline.
And the Pacific Ocean most of the way.
Yeah. I will not, at this time next week, be all the way to Australia, but I have a pretty cool stop on the way there, and I'm going to be messaging and pestering a bunch of people. Let me know about things I need to do, both like really cool restaurants and museums and things like that, but also like mundane things. Like I definitely need to, for example, go to Bunnings on a Sunday to get a sausage. Like that's kind of an obvious one. Or like I said, go to Schnitz on a Tuesday. I want to do like very ordinary things as well. So please help me with that. Best places for pies and just like very regular things. The more ordinary, the better. Let me know. I'm really looking forward to this and hopefully see a bunch of y'all there.
Playing tourist is cool, but just immersing yourselves in what it's like to just be an Australian on a daily basis seems cool too. The conversation continues at Americans Footy, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We reply to comments on all of those. I'm not sure if our DMs are open, but I mean, we tend to follow back.
Oh no, we do. Our DMs actually are open because we keep getting loaded with spam requests.
Oh, all sorts of crypto stuff and sex bots. I think it's mostly crypto. He's at Castle Media. I'm at Benjamin HK01. The executive producer is on Instagram at Cat Named Brian. How's he doing right now?
Good, and he should be ready for something fun in a few minutes.
Ah, yes, some people call it tube. It's the Choru treat.
I call it gabagool. Wow, he's like asleep enough that it didn't even get his attention. Hey, Brian, gabagool? Oh, he's like really sleeping.
So maybe the gabagool will wait. Good time of day.